Good morning, and welcome to Unitarian Universalist Church West. Welcome to this space of love, support, justice, compassion, and fellowship. All of who you are, all of your hopes and dreams and struggles and challenges are welcome here. My name is Steve Frey, and as a member of the worship ministry team, I'm glad to be here with you today. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or to UU Church West, we are very happy that you are here. Send us a message to visitor@uucw.org when you can. We would love to connect with you. I'd like to introduce the wonderful team of people who have helped shape today's service. Our lead music director, Jennifer Nicolosi. Dave Cicero, our Director of Lifespan Religious Education. Pat Ryerson will tell us about our Split the Plate. Also with us is Kelly Bognar, our Publications Coordinator, working behind the scenes to manage the technology that makes our service possible. Our pulpit guests today are the Writing Circle. Facilitator Helen Ambule has assembled a lot of really talented people. Among them today will be Carolyn Ruck, Garth Jennings, Mary Hausman, Kate Walkowski, Susan Foley, Vicki Bresky, Patricia Doria, Louise Verwert, Sheila Reynolds, Kathy White, Carol Klaus, and Susan Endis. Now please join Pat Oria in lighting of the chalice.
The flaming chalice is a symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. A sacred vessel made from earthly clay, it is filled with the mind's fire, the heart's warmth, and the spirit's spark. As we light our chalice today, we illuminate anew the world we are called to serve with justice and compassion.
Good morning. I'm Dave Cicero, Director of Lifespan Religious Education here at Unitarian Universalist Church West. The pronouns I'd like people to use for me are he, him, or their. Today's story for all ages was written and will be read by Carolyn Ruck. I'd like to thank Carolyn for sharing with us this story, which is about being and expressing one's true self. It's especially fitting since this month we're exploring what being Unitarian Universalist means. Discovering and accepting, heck, even just understanding who we are isn't always easy. This is especially true for adolescents who are often trying on different identities just to see how they fit. In our culture, we put a lot of stock into the implication of, that is, how others will respond to our outward appearance and identity. Labels we use, and usually for others, like jock, nerd, tomboy, princess, mama's boy, cheerleader, skater, emo, boomer, hipster, femme, poly, vegan, I could go on, all assume that the person we're referencing fits neatly into our own understanding of what that is. People are not so simple. Self-identified Unitarian Universalists covenant to accept that each person is on their own, often evolving, journey of growth and self-discovery. We also agree to respect each other's declarations of how they feel, what they need, and who they are. This is their truth to claim, not ours. With this also comes the trust that we speak the truths that we ourselves currently hold and understand. It seems natural, and maybe we're socially conditioned, to occasionally have doubts about who we are at our core. In Carolyn's story today, Hope is preparing to bring herself out in public, but she's also a bit wary. So she chooses to do so in a new neighborhood and during the winter solstice, the night with the longest period of darkness. She expects that people during this time might be too busy with their holiday shopping to take much notice of her. And while the winter solstice comes at a time of year with much darkness, it's also, fittingly, a time of hope, when more light will soon return. So please consider what it means to be whatever, fill in the blank, while hearing Carolyn Ruck reading Trans Solstice.
Trans Solstice. Hope wound her pink knitted scarf around her neck so that it met her top coat button. She looked in the mirror and found herself almost passable, despite the familiar despair of her body's betrayal. Hope just knew that most people on the sidewalk would look at her longer than they should and make instant judgments. Something is off about her. Poor thing. She had gingerly applied eyeliner and mascara and then lipstick, dabbing ever so carefully. Her gentle soul was magnified by these adornments. Her whitening foundation was effective, especially in the shadows. Hope summoned grains of courage and found herself humming from somewhere deep inside. The winter solstice was the comfort she'd been craving. Cold and dark were her companions. Hope walked out to her dented Honda and began her journey into the city. She had read about this vibrant and colorful neighborhood. Her anonymity on these streets was both a shield and an opportunity. She could practice hip swing and stride. This was a neighborhood that could make room for outcasts and bodies of all shapes and colors. It was the longest night of the year for Hope. She mingled amongst the shoppers, feeling closer to them, to actually being one of them. She liked the idea of fitting in for a change. Hope could be any woman, yielding to her femaleness in surges of womanly hormones. She walked past the hemp shop, the tiny liquor store, and the organic cafe. She lingered in front of the old theater featuring Miracle on 34th Street. Voices in her head still shouted, "How dare you? You've always been selfish. You are an embarrassment to this family." But the voices faded just enough. It was the long darkness that offered the coverage she needed to be herself. Hope dared to reveal more of herself in public, shunning the gawkers and the old voices. Occasionally, Hope turned her head to gaze directly into the faces of solstice shoppers. A man wearing a red beret really looked at her. An older woman clutching shopping bags gave Hope a scornful look, but it mattered less tonight. Hope was on her way to a place for herself to shine. Hope found herself smiling in the dark, decidedly more Hope than Henry tonight.
Good morning. My name is Helen Ambiel. I've been facilitating a writing circle at UUCW for the last 5 years. Today's service will be a collage of voices from the women participating this past year. We met twice a month on Zoom from October through May. Some of the women have participated each or several of the last 5 years. Others joined for the first time last year. We write while we meet and between meetings, then give voice to our written words in our circle. We honor the words by listening well, ringing a chime, and offering requested feedback. Our goal is to build trust so that honest words flow from our pens. We follow the practices of women writing for a change. Today, you'll hear words written in response to various prompts given this last year, reflecting past and present happenings, real and imaginary happenings. You'll hear a sampling of heartfelt creative expression.
Empty. Pages and sanctuary, lit only by morning. Words wait at windows. Hope happens with intention. Kindred spirits enter sacred space. Ah, there's the chime. Shame shatters. Fear dissolves. Memories mingle. A circle of trust begins, goes round and round, opening, exposing, no escaping truth or dare. It all comes round again. What is it, this morning time of ink and paper ritual that draws me to gather with sisters when everything else resembling good in the world is gone? There's no pretense here. We don't pretend to be a favorite tree or vegetable. We leave that superficiality to other gatherings less brave. No, we are alert. We are vacuum-packed, Jill in the box potential, just waiting for the crank to turn once more. We are hushed witnesses, frayed tendrils needing stitches, about to snap, stretching to confess, reaching to be comforted, fragile like glass before it shatters, strong like truth before it bends. Words peer inside, watching our flaming ritual. Some words are patient and know their time. Some are insistent and move the fire. Some words circle and dance. Some tie chaos carefully with a bow. Some are polite and perfectly precise. Some words burst the seams of safety, ready to bake the delicious pie of danger. They crack the window with their power and move my pen. Detached, I observe the miracle. I hear truth shouting between the lines. I blurt the missing piece. Heaven arrives. I disappear. The flame finds me, asking to be whole on the altar of recovery, changed, filled pages and sanctuary, lit only by morning. The chalice of fire goes round and round, opening, exposing truth or dare. Ah, there's the chime. There's no escaping a circle of trust. It all comes round again.
Grandmother's hands. There are 2 photographs of my grandmother's hands that I treasure. One was taken the day of her wedding when she was in her 20s. This sepia-tone photograph is remarkably clear. The newlyweds are seated around a small circular table draped in silky white cloth. The handsome couple gaze confidently into the camera, filled with the promise of a new life together. One of my grandmother's hands rests slightly on the table. The other is placed leisurely in her lap. Her hands are smooth, slender, and graceful, ending in long, delicate fingers. Their sole simple adornment is a solid gold wedding band on the 3rd finger of her left hand. This attractive young woman is unrecognizable to me now, since the picture was taken long before I was born. It is hard to believe it is my grandmother, yet it remains a beautiful and haunting image. I long ago had it framed and display it in my home. The second black and white photo is more familiar to me. In the picture, the hands of a woman nearing 100 years of age are nestled in her lap. Grandmother's aging hands are marked by the passage of time. The outstanding veins, the thin, porous, wrinkled skin, and the bony, arthritic fingers contrast with the elegant hands in the timeless wedding photograph. Only the wedding band remains. Still, these are the hands I know best. They evoke potent memories and powerful emotional responses for days long past. My grandmother's hands were hardworking and purpose-driven. Early on, she performed chores on the family farm. Later, she trained as a stenographer and typist. She worked many factory jobs during the Depression and World War II to help support her family. Grandmother raised children and tended grandchildren. I vividly remember her kneading bread, making and baking delicious cookies, cakes, and pies, canning fruits and vegetables, and serving up wonderful homemade meals. As a young child, her hands gave me faithful care. She walked me in my stroller, held me in her lap, turned the pages of books she read, and showed me how to play all sorts of games. I recall my hand being held protectively in hers as we walked down city streets shopping together. As my grandmother grew very old and succumbed to Alzheimer's disease, her hands were no longer useful. It was then that my hands performed her daily living tasks. I helped her walk, dress, eat, wash, provided gentle touch, tucked her into bed at night, and oriented her to the coming new day. Given my grandmother's love and devotion to her first grandchild, I gratefully assumed this role. It was more than a fair exchange of hands as well as hearts.
Good morning, I'm Kate Walkowski. Select a photograph and use that as your prompt. I picked a wedding photo of my husband's parents on their wedding day. Specifically, I focused on his mother. I never met her, but I mashed up what I have been told of the legend with the idea and form of U.S. Poet Laureate Joy Harjo's poem, She Had Some Horses. She wrote some poems. She wrote some poems in a tiny white wedding dress, slicing through towering cake and frosted cream, with help, no help, from the handsome philosopher in an I do tuxedo. And I do cut the cake myself. She wrote some poems on 6 broken eggs, and named them, and read to them, and fed them, and clothed the girls in bespoke clothing, and watched the boys walk on the pins and needles. She wrote some poems about Shakespeare and the theater and vodka gimlets and smoking and cooking and baking and making do. She wrote some poems on moving furniture about to keep the philosopher at attention, and wallpapered flowers and hung laundry and fitted her wedding dress on a daughter. She wrote some poems about hating Tommy Thompson and teaching high school English. These teenagers think they invented sex. And grading papers and parents who talked back. She wrote some poems on needlepoint and gaming with grandkids, and 2 weeks each summer on St. Germain, packed in tight to get away with all the people she packed in with tight all the other weeks of the year. If writing is living, if writing is breathing, if writing is loving, she wrote some poems.
The gifts of dementia. When I took my husband Mark to the hospital on August 31st, 2016, I had no idea he would never return home. That day began a journey of almost 3 years. It involved many different levels of care at many different facilities. It also involved adjustment, disappointment, and commitment, but mostly it involved love. It was an ending to our life as we knew it. We had been living together in a condominium in Brookfield, but he never returned to that. But it was also a beginning that we made together. In it, we discovered the joys of caretaking, the wonder of residence, the patience and caring of the nurses and the aides, and we discovered the total involvement of staff and therapists. Mostly, and least expected, we discovered the gifts of dementia. I want to be very clear that no one wants dementia, not for ourselves or for our loved ones. I do not want to sound glib. It is a huge loss, and it is extremely sad. We have lost the person as they used to be. In Mark's case, I believe the anesthesia given to him when he had surgery catapulted him into dementia. He always knew me, he knew his family, he knew everyone, but his memory was not the same. I also believe with dementia that the filters are gone, entirely removed, so the barriers that may have held someone back are no longer there. This allowed for what I am calling the gifts of dementia. And in Mark's case, there were 3. First was joy, unadulterated joy about everything possible. Previously, Mark was happy and felt joy, but not at this level, not at this elevated level. The second gift was an open expression of his feelings. He had a very rich interior life, but now he put it into words. He had been an introvert, and now he was an extrovert. He could not tell me enough how much he loved me, and he openly expressed his feelings to everyone, most everyone he came in contact with, and it was beautiful to see. Third was creativity. Mark was a doctor. He had a scientific brain. Now he was enjoying creativity. He began painting, and he loved it. Nothing could have surprised me more. 2 of his paintings were in an art show, and he was very proud of them, and he loved doing it. He joined the bell choir, which they gave several concerts, and it gave him a feeling of accomplishment to do that, he told me. Most of our 3-year journey was at the Lutheran home, where Mark died on January 1st, 2019. This is not how I thought we would live out our life together, but that is what happened, and we made the best of it. I was there every day, mostly all day, because I wanted to be. I loved him, and I felt most happy being with him. Our days were filled with activities, fun activities. We also had a lot of alone time. We made many, many friends at the Lutheran home, the residents, the staff, and other caregivers. There was a sacredness about our lives at this time. There was a deep spiritual connection. The messiness of life was not there. We were simply 2 souls connected by love, and I would not trade those years for anything. They were a gift.
Our assignment was to write about a photo, possibly from your collection. Oh boy, I went back through 15 years of pictures from the adventurous travels I've been so fortunate to experience. How to choose? So many beautiful scenes from across the world. A number of intriguing faces and clothing from various ethnic groups I've encountered. I just couldn't decide. I have to pick one photo? Whew. Then, on a warm but cloudy early January day, it was as if a spirit or fairy gifted me. The picture presented itself. Teddy and I were crossing the bridge from Hoyt Park to Menominee River Parkway. As I looked at the river to my left, there it was. The calmness of the river, the contrast of dark water and snowy banks, the skeletal bones of the trees, the fractured clouds with bits of blue between. I tugged my phone from my pocket with bulky gloved hands and took the shot. Warm and rested back at home, I studied the picture I snapped on the bridge. The bridge I walked over to swim at Hoyt from the age of 6. The bridge I rolled the stroller over so my toddlers could splash in the baby pool. The bridge I crossed to meet friends at the landing for camaraderie, beer, and music. I have watched this river for over 60 years in every season. This year, it spoke to my soul. Is it age that brings comfort with what is known and worn? Or is it an inner peace I have found after many years of relishing new experiences, searching for the exotic or unfamiliar? I am at ease and accepting of limited or curtailed international travel, with the obvious exception of visits to my son and his family in Japan. The familiar and memory-laden are fine substitutes for new and alluring sights. It was only after viewing the photo several times that I noticed, or consciously perceived, a glow of sun reflected on the water as it flowed downstream on that overcast day, and that resonated with me. Is this the message I was gifted when spirited to take the picture? This is where I am headed? Sunny times ahead as my life flows on? It was subtle, but hope-inspiring.
My dad was a crooner. He loved Frank Sinatra, who grew up down the road from my father's New Jersey hometown. I can hear him now singing along with the big band records he played on our phonograph. When he was singing with Frankie or Bing, he often picked me up and danced me around the room. His joy seeped into my cells, and my love of music began in his heart. Early on, I sang mostly to myself. I sang to the trees and to the sun, and I sang lullabies to my ever-expanding brood of siblings. Often, I hummed myself to sleep. My first public performance was compelled by Sister Grace Marie for her annual St. Patrick's Day Gala. I was in 7th grade at St. Catherine of Siena School. I learned Danny Boy, When Irish Eyes Are Smiling, I'm Looking Over a Four-Leaf Clover, and many other Irish favorites. The St. Patrick's Day Gala was a roaring success, and my stock rose in Sister Grace Marie's market. For this, I was grateful and relieved, as I was too shy and uncomfortable to be a natural performer. I sang in the choir at Brookfield East High School after our family moved to Wisconsin. Senior year, I was awarded the lead in the annual spring musical, a surprise as I had only tried out for a small role. The camaraderie among cast members was like being with my brothers and sisters, though the stage did not feel like home. Musical maturity came with spiritual awakening. Alone and frightened after early divorce, music soothed my spirit and invited my shattered heart to experience once again the joy I had known as a child. I began to sing along with my generation of crooners, Joni Mitchell, Judy Collins, and Joan Baez. I found comfort and healing in their words and in their voices. I began a practice of singing and dancing to the music. Most nights, after my children were asleep, I played an album on my turntable. I always sang along, and often a dance came spontaneously through my body. Over time, music became a source of peace and confidence. Music taught me that all would be well. Music gave me the confidence to know that I could be adequate, that I could be what my children needed me to be. Music became the foundation on which I danced my life. Now, my love of music is simply a part of who I am. From my father's heart to my soul, music is at the core of my identity. Music sings the song of my life.
This poem is using the song Twilight Time, lyrics by Buck Ram in the 1940s, as inspiration. Several of the lines read, "Heavenly shades of night are falling, it's twilight time. Out of the mist your voice is calling, it's twilight time. When purple-colored curtains mark the end of day, I'll hear you, my dear, at twilight time." And this is Twilight Time at the Lake in Summer. At twilight time at the lake, the old dented rowboat, chipped wooden oars still resting in rusted locks, lay upon the shore, lake lapping at its stern, and the boat a cradle rocked gently. Up the hill, looking over the lake, a graying wooden green-shuttered shell of a house stood, wrapped closely on two sides by a broad and generous porch, welcoming. The house watched as the orange ball sun fell below the clouds on the western shore, turning all to gold, and the sunset saw itself reflected in the rippling glass of the old house's windows, alight with fire. The house watched as the day paused to catch its breath between day and night. It knew twilight, darkening. Pines closed in around, holding, protecting the house from night terrors, as if it were a child, prone to bad dreams. The birds fell silent, the day creatures slept, the bats came out to sweep and swoop and swerve. The creatures of the night awoke to rummage and search and find. The people of the house watched from the broad porch as purple-colored curtains marked the end of day at twilight time. Those people, those ghosts, ascended the creaking wooden stairs to rest, and the house sighed and slept.
The painted clay colors were applied daily to the face and to the eyes as often as necessary. Eyes that failed on their own, eyes that were not blue enough, wide enough, soft enough, eyes that once met the gaze of others and must never again be so bold. The colors glittered and were assembled and drawn by each woman herself, reapplied and reinforced by a community taunt here, an icy stare there, a shaming on Tuesday, a silencing on Sunday. Painted and quiet, we transformed reality to illusion, hoping against hope that magic really could make us worthy. Without the nightly cleansing ritual, the layers would become too thick and heavy for the head to hold itself up. So every 24 hours, the cover-up commenced again on a newly scrubbed face, wondering where it went wrong. Sprayed and straightened, curled and dyed, refreshed, blushed, tucked and lifted. We had been undercover for so long, we couldn't remember the first time, or any time, we had actually agreed to ritualistic sacrifice. Perhaps consent becomes moot when masks are worn to hide an open face, a face so powerful in its natural state that its lines must be redrawn, gerrymandered every morning.
I wrote this piece in March of this year in response to a prompt to write an ode. Ode to a shot in the arm. With apologies to Dr. Seuss, who may owe my children an apology, so maybe we're even. The sun did not shine, out of doors was too cold, so we sat in our house, just we two, growing old. I sat there with Bob, we sat there, we two. Because of dread COVID, we had nothing to do. No theater or concerts or meals out to eat. The world felt quite small. Zoom calls were a treat. Too young for vaccines, too old to be rash, we sat and watched Netflix and ordered DoorDash. So all we could do was to sit, 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 sit. And we did not like it, not one little bit. We dreamed of the day we'd again get to play, but because of our age, vaccines seemed far away. And then the phone rang. Half good news, it was true. A vaccine for one, but not one for two. But the phone rang again, and the teaching I do, though unpaid, hit the jackpot. I was eligible too. So we both got our shots with smiles on our faces, 'cause we knew with one more, we could start going places. Congratulations, the nurse said. Today is your day. You're off to great places. You're off and away. With 2 shots in your arm in a brief week or two, there's no telling what things you might choose to do. And her words made me think, as the wisest words do. We had a real choice here, once COVID was through. There were many things COVID that we would not miss. Clorox wipes on the counter, kids forbidden to kiss. But masks on a plane seem a wise thing to do. It's not a coincidence this year had less flu. And will we choose to go back to fast food on the run? Or stick with home cooking once COVID is done? There's been more time to think and to read and to write, to send letters to old friends, watch birds, and to hike. We will gladly return to hugs as a greeting, to visits in person that need not be kept fleeting. But we still have some time before COVID is through to decide what to stick with. Why not? Wouldn't you?
This is a future letter I wrote to myself from 2031 to 2021. Dear Kathy, I was reminiscing today about the time you stood in your front yard and raised your fist in support of Black Lives Matter marchers. How seldom we saw results back then. I just read a new book entitled The Pandemic, named COVID-19, A Social Revolution, by President Tyler Perry. He talks about your time of societal upheaval as Asians, Blacks, Latino people, Native Americans, and Caucasians rose up in marches, protests, and government cleansing programs to recreate our country. With Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. becoming states, and our election system transforming into fair voting for all, our country has grown into a living example of democracy in its purest form. President Perry has changed our national anthem to "We Shall Overcome." With the addition of 2 states, our flag needed a redesign. Congress formed a multicultural committee which included representation from all races, sexual orientations, gender identities, immigrants, marginalized groups, and those physically and mentally challenged. Our new flag is beautiful. The 52 stars contain varied shades of brown, red, yellow, white, and gray. The stripes alternate from black to red to yellow to honor the people our government is making reparations to for a long history of cruelty and abuse. City planners are restructuring our cities, towns, and villages to make all areas open and welcoming to our citizens and immigrants. Schools are fully integrated and are generously supplied with accurate, inclusive literature for study and learning. Classrooms provide the latest in educational technology and encourage lively discussion in an atmosphere where every student matters. Public transportation is widespread and affordable. People want to own a vehicle, buy electric cars. Gas stations no longer exist. There is such a global enthusiasm for being ecologically savvy that world leaders share ideas for bringing our planet back from past devastation. We've learned to value and heed what our scientists tell us. Scientists are so revered that they receive tax-free status. You'd love my neighborhood. My next-door neighbors are Moon and Rain. They're a pagan lesbian couple with 2 daughters, Demeter and Gaia, a golden retriever called Isis, and a Himalayan cat named Guru. I never miss the neighborhood parties they organize. Destiny and Denzel always bring their much-loved sweet potato pie. Our neighborhood parties have an international flair with such treats as apple pie, spring rolls, corn pone, enchiladas, macaroni and cheese, and jambalaya. Many of us stay into the evening telling stories and enjoying each other's company. You may be surprised to know that we've made gun ownership a crime. During designated hunting seasons, people rent a gun and ammunition. After hunting season ends, they return the borrowed weapons and remaining bullets. Failure to return weapons has huge consequences. Since implementing a modern rehabilitation program in our prisons, we see penal institutions being transformed into progressive, humane environments. When someone arrives at a prison, personnel work closely with that individual to provide free education up to and including a doctorate or job training skills from technical colleges, compassionate treatment, including nutritious meals, exercise, counseling, family visits, and spa facilities. The recidivism rate is 0.001%. Prisoners leave as changed human beings who are eager to work and be productive members of society. This country has become the melting pot our forefathers dreamed of. President Perry has worked closely with Congress to revamp police training programs, updating diversity education and personal accountability. Police no longer carry guns, but may have access in extreme instances as delineated in the new amendment to the Constitution. A world you couldn't imagine has become my reality. The air I breathe is so refreshing. You will love the pure water I enjoy, the warmth of mixed neighborhoods, and the strides science is making in medical breakthroughs, space programs, and global healing. Hang in there, dear one. Your future self, Kathy.
I think we all have superpowers. They are characteristics, qualities in us that present themselves when they are most needed. I've divided my life into decades and recognized one or two superpowers that was available to me when I needed it. From age 0 through 9, the superpowers I developed were resilience and survival. I did this by recovering when kids would make fun of me in school for mispronouncing words when I was reading out loud to the class. In my teenage years, the superpower I developed was safety, which manifested itself in learning how to drive a car responsibly, both automatic and stick shift, which was more of a challenge as my father did attest to it at the time. I think I was responsible for some of his gray hair. From age 20 through 29, I developed an extreme work ethic, which I learned from my father. It involved getting up in the dark and going home in the dark. It wasn't always pleasant, but I think it made me a stronger person. In my 30s, I gained the superpower of courage. I quit working for my family, assessed what I wanted to do with my life, and I enrolled in college. From age 40 through 49, self-esteem was the superpower I finally became familiar with. I graduated from college and started commuting to my new job in downtown Chicago. In my 50s, exhilaration and connection were my superpowers. I changed companies and took a job much closer to home, where I was able to start some close friendships which have lasted over 20 years. I also joined UUCW. From age 60 through 69, I retired and had a sense of adventure which included ziplining over a very deep forest in Jamaica. And now at age 70 and beyond, my current new superpowers include joy and freedom. I'm looking for new hobbies and enjoying coloring, puzzles, and cooking. I'm also noticing that I have a heartfelt appreciation for life and a deepening spiritual faith. I've accumulated these superpowers over my lifetime, and there is still time for more.
What home means to me. Home is this house I've lived in most of my life.
My family of origin moved here when I was 3. One of the first things my father did was build a larger porch in the front and a screened-in porch in the back, my favorite place in the summertime. The neighborhood has changed a lot over the years. There used to be cornfields north of Wisconsin Avenue, where the GE building is now. On the south, the zoo was developed where there were woods my sisters and I used to explore. The St. Camillus campus stands, greatly expanded, where there once were single-family homes. A 15-story senior apartment building is going up, replacing the original St. Camillus Hospital. Wisconsin Avenue Park is still intact, with its picnic area, playground, and baseball diamonds. There's a path past 2 retention ponds where neighbors walk their dogs. While my neighborhood has been changing, my house has remained largely the same. There used to be an apple tree in the backyard, which bloomed pink and white each May. It has been gone a long time. The little blue spruce I planted in the front is 40 feet tall now. The birch tree next to the house in the back is still there. It has provided beauty and shade for as long as I can remember, and when it finally comes down, it will break my heart. My parents moved to Brookfield when they retired, and I moved back into the house I grew up in with my family. Eventually, my husband died, and my daughters left to find their independence, get married, or go away to school. Each of them came back while reimagining her life, and then moving on again. But this house will always be home to me.
My kitchen table. About 12 years ago, a poetry instructor suggested we leave a poem somewhere in the world. Previously, I had written a kitchen table poem and decided to write it out on the underside of our table. I contorted my body and craned my neck to write the 60-word poem with a Sharpie marker under our tabletop. It's still there. It reads, Kitchen Table. This maple table, around which we have sat for 33 years, first 2 of us, eventually 5, now 2 again, displays stains of food and drink, paint and marker, the gray of newspaper laid across it daily. Our place for gathering, welcoming, sustenance. Let us give thanks for food, family, friends. This kitchen table, a witness of us. My table was constructed by gluing and clamping together 21 separate 1 1/4 inch square by 5 foot lengths of solid maple blocks to make a 3 by 5 foot surface, a surface on which Bruce and I constructed our family life. When needed, I can squeeze 10 people around it with no elbow room. The table was the first new piece of furniture Bruce and I bought about 2 years into our marriage. It moved with us from Madison to Champaign, Illinois, to 1 year in Oklahoma City, to 2 years in Shaker Heights, Ohio, then to Brookfield, Wisconsin. About a year ago, it moved with me once again to Whitefish Bay. The table represents a lifetime of meals. It represents letters written and homework, newspaper and book reading, daydreaming, gazing out windows, watching seasons unfold and fade into the next, tea, coffee, beer, and wine drinking. It holds conversations, laughter, and endless stories from first to last words. This table was steps away from Bruce's last breath. We roll out pie crusts and cookie dough here. We kneaded bread here. I sewed Halloween costumes at this table. After a quick wipe, its sturdy surface will be ready for the next meal, project, and conversation.
There is freedom to be found in the telling of the story, in the raising of the shades, the opening of the windows and the unlocking of the door, letting in the sunshine
to illuminate the darkness of family secrets. There is freedom to be found from release from admonitions to be quiet and never tell what is private in the family, to be no more the keeper, the fixer of family secrets. There is freedom to be found in the writing, in the sharing, and in the listening within the warmth of a circle of women who write, where no one is alone. We are all held gently, tenderly unburdened. There is freedom.
UUC Church West Split the Plate program is one of outreach and of generosity. Each month, we give half of all undesignated offerings to a nonprofit organization to help us live our Unitarian Universalist values and to serve our greater community. Our Split the Plate partner for mid-July through the end of August is the Gathering of Southeastern Wisconsin. The Gathering is a community of guests and of staff and of volunteers united by the common goal, which is to feed the hungry in mind, in body, and in spirit. At the gathering, volunteers provide 10 to 11 free meals each week, cooked on site at 4 different Milwaukee locations, to those who would otherwise go hungry. The gathering also offers services associated with ending hunger and homelessness and works to educate our greater community on hunger issues. They have continued their service throughout the COVID-19 pandemic by providing carry-out meal service and will continue to serve carry-out meals to the hungry until it is safe again to serve meals indoors. To support the gathering for the next 7 weeks, please go to the UUCW website's Donate tab and select Split the Plate from the menu provided. Or you can text or you can email your donation today using the information found here. Today, I thank you for your generosity to the gathering.
I'd like to thank each person who shared their written words with us this morning. Also, thank you to Kelly Bognar for recording and behind the scenes video magic, and to Jen Nicolosi for the musical interludes. In closing, I'll read a poem composed from individual words or lines expressed by each person in the writing circle on February 3rd, 2021. Be part of the whole. Found poem from Readback Lines. I wonder at beauty, a theme I realize observing that belonging is not so easy. Frost crystals multiply, one upon the other, threads within today's fragile frame. We each have a piece of what came from breaking apart, what made no more sense together. We are not fully formed. Live it and change it, spring up again, reconstruct with an image of beauty. Be part of the whole.